Hello again, it's Naomi Richardson, and welcome to another episode of the Power Chat series. Today, I will be interviewing Star Crawford and Angeline Smith, two leaders in the business and finance industry here in Detroit. We will be discussing the semantics of finding your purpose and the various roles you can have in financial management positions. How are you ladies today?
Doing
Fantastic.
great. Hi,
Great. If you guys would love to introduce yourselves, go right ahead.
Star. Go for it.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Star Crawford, or good afternoon, I should say. My name is Star Crawford or Estrella Crawford. I am the market executive for Bank of America. I support the philanthropic efforts of the bank. And so, primarily, I am on the philanthropy in terms of grants and sponsorships, but we like to make sure that everyone at the bank is focused on how we deliver for our clients, colleagues, and communities. And so I get to do a lot of great work around not only supporting our communities with grants and sponsorships, but I also get to help connect our employees to volunteerism, support our employee resource groups, and then I also get to make sure that as I'm out in the community, if anyone needs any assistance and they're a client or a customer or even thinking about becoming a client or customer, then I can make sure that I connect them to the right places within our company. Pleasure to be here with you.
Yes, thank you so much. Angeline?
Excellent. As Naomi said, I'm Angeline Smith. I am the CEO and Chief Strategist of A. Smith Strategies. It is a brand new brand under Angeline and Associates, which is a firm that I began in 2004 after working in the corporate consulting arena, primarily with KPMG Consulting. And as I was finishing my master's degree in administration, I got the bug as a consultant because I had an opportunity to teach community development, Black grant recipients, how to manage their grants because my background as an accountant is in grant management. And so instead of working at the institutional level, I really wanted to bring that knowledge down in the community. And so that is the vision for the firm. And that's what I've been doing for the past 19 years is working with nonprofits, helping them understand how to manage the funds that they receive, helping them get their infrastructure together to be good stewards of the funds that they receive and to continue to be eligible for those funds. In addition to working with the nonprofit organizations, I also work with entrepreneurs and small businesses. Part of the reason for the rebranding is what I have found is there's more of an effort, and this is just human behavior, to go after the immediate need. And so that's what I had inherently just been serving by giving accounting, providing accounting services, setting up QuickBooks, processing payroll and the like. But what I know is that those are all tactical services. But when you connect the tactical to the strategic, which is where the consulting comes from, you can be more effective at what you're doing with your mission as a nonprofit and your profit goals as a for-profit. And so that's part of the rebranding is to sort of merge the tactical with the strategic so that when I am engaging with a prospective client, they understand that I'm not just there to put a finger in the dam, but I want to help them build their infrastructure in a strategic way. And then those tactics will come out of whatever the strategic plan is. So I'm happy to hear what Star is doing because it seems to be quite in alignment with the service delivery from the community perspective for what I do. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you guys so much for that lovely introduction. I am very excited. So my first question, read over your bios, amazing, amazing. What first piqued your interest in working the financial and economic market field?
I'll answer that. Well, for me, I've just always been a nerd, and I'm also someone that likes concrete facts, if you will. And so, a funny story, I started out in journalism because even in journalism, at least at the time I was thinking about it, because it's sort of different now, it's just the facts. You tell the story, there's no ambiguity. And I couldn't understand for a while how I made the transition from that to accounting, but I realized it's the same thing. You're always going to have 4 if you add 2 plus 2. And so for me, it was just a matter of what my passion was. And then after that, figuring out how to make that passion effective so that I can contribute to others. And so for me, it was just the way my brain works is what attracted me to the finance.
Amazing.
That's fantastic. So my story is a little bit different, Naomi. What I'll tell you is I like to say that I kind of Forrest Gump my way through life. So for those of us who've seen that Forrest Gump movie, for me, it's a little bit different in the fact that, you know, growing up, so originally I'm from New York and I lived a lot of different places. You know, when I started my journey and when I started thinking about what my next steps were, just even from high school, I will tell you that, you know, I'm the first one in my family to graduate high school, let alone go to college. And all I knew was that I wanted to go to work. I really didn't care where I was going to go to work. And growing up in New York, the big thing to do if you wanted to feel like you've actually made it, it was to get a job in Manhattan. And when I was young, the big thing that I aspired for literally was to be a secretary in Manhattan. That's it. Like I just wanted to dress up, go to work, be a secretary, and type fast because that was the thing, right? And so I read this book by Nathan McCall, Makes Me Want to Holler, and it talks about Atlanta being the Black Mecca. And so I'm mixed, right? My mom's Puerto Rican, my dad's African American. And I will tell you that, you know, I was raised on a Puerto Rican side of my family. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to go to Atlanta and I'm going to go to an HBCU and I'm going to learn about the Black side of my family. Right. So all of that, like I had no, like I just wanted to go to work. That's really it. I didn't want to be like, you know, I love my family, but they didn't have a lot of aspirations, regardless of whether they were a product of their environment or whatever happened. They just, what I saw growing up, no one worked. They were either on public assistance or doing some stuff that was illegal. I was like, I need a job. So I'll fast forward and say, when I graduated college, I went to work I just wanted to do customer service. And I worked for a company named GE. So whatever company would hire me, I would go work there. So it wasn't like I was like, oh, I want to be in banking. It just so happened when I got to Bank of America, I was living in California at the time. Like, and I will tell you, I've lived in a lot of different places and I've been very blessed that God looked out for me and I was able to travel. And so I was in California and I wanted to move back to Atlanta where I was with GE. But the people that I knew there, when I reached out to them, they were working for Bank of America. So 19 years ago, I reached out to someone and I said, hey, are y'all still, you know, is there anything open at GE? And they said, no, we're at Bank of America now. And oh, by the way, we're not in Atlanta, we're in North Carolina. And I was like, well, I need a job. I just want to work. Right. And so at that time in my life, I focused on where I could go, where I would have a support system. And I was blessed that it ended up being Bank of America. There were so many different things that I got a chance to do. And the company that we work for, the resources that they provide to the employees are outstanding. And so hence why I've been here 19 years. I've never really worked in a financial center. I've had about 9 different jobs. I've lived in 3 different states for the bank. Never once worked like as a teller or a financial center manager. Bless their heart. I believe that they are truly the heart and soul of our company, but I've always worked in the back office space of it. So global tech and ops, our fraud division, process control, and now philanthropy. So this is a long way of saying that I lucked up in the financial industry. What I could tell you is that I fell in love with the fact that we help people achieve their financial goals and live their best life. Right. And so that part is what keeps me here. It's an amazing company. It's an amazing industry. We don't build anything per se, right? And we don't create anything, but what we do is provide a system to help people do the things that they want to do in their lives. And the ability that we have to like educate and teach people about their finances, because we know that that is a founding principle and a founding resource in your life and how you get to live out your life. That is what keeps me in this industry. And that's what helps me to stay here and be a lifer, if you would.
Thank you so much. That sounds amazing. I just love hearing about all of this. So, how do you maintain your drive and enthusiasm for the work that you do for business leadership teams, organizations, and business owners?
For me, it's about the connection, seeing people and their excitement about their goals, whether I'm working with someone who wants to start a nonprofit because they have a need that they want to meet in the community, or an entrepreneur who has a skill, who isn't very adept at the business side of business, but they really want to do a good job. So it's really seeing people and actually taking them through the process, and I call it from vision to victory, where they have a brainchild and they just needed to come out. And that's part of what I do from a strategic perspective, is taking them through the steps and keeping them held back, because as soon as an idea comes as we're going through the process, they want to jump right into it. So for me, it's just the idea of actually seeing it come to fruition. I still am in touch with a woman who contacted me, and she had worked at one of the automotive factories for years, and she was newly retired. She had just had a huge home built, and unfortunately, her marriage, after so many years, had fallen apart, and she didn't want to lose her home. And so she came to me with the idea of creating an adult care home facility in her home where, she can get licensed. And so I just walked her through that process. We looked at the licensing process. She got licensed for an in-home adult daycare or long-term care center. We went and we traveled and visited other people who did the same thing. You'd be surprised how people will tell their stories to help others. We think folks are selfish. They're not. They like to tell their stories. And so just facilitating her through that process. And I think that was probably about 10 years ago. And she only needed, when we did the numbers, she only needed about 6 residents. The house was huge. They each had their own rooms and everything that was needed. And she recently, about a year ago, reached out to me on LinkedIn, and she said, I'm still going. And so that is what I like, is to actually see that happen. And for me, the key is always to make sure that people are slow and methodical and looking long term, as opposed to just getting an idea and jumping out there, because that's really the problem that we have with any kind of entity that sets up. If we're not normalizing, then stabilizing, and then scaling, then we're not going to be successful. And to see people have that light bulb come on and help them be patient and wait to birth that is where my passion comes from, to continue to see that at the ground level, because I started in terms of the consulting, working with big institutions, and I was just a small cog in a wheel of a consulting team, and I really wanted to take that to the community where I'm from.
Thank you.
That's beautiful, Angeline. For me, it's about the impact, right? And so I can see it, in the work that I do today. We decision the philanthropy, we decision, where the monies are being invested, who we're going to support. And we have an overarching goal, right, of helping people through economic mobility. And we break that down into different pillars: basic needs, workforce development, community development in terms of affordable housing, and small business. So I have the ability to help shape the lives of people through partnerships with various nonprofits. And so when you can make those decisions and research, right, really go in and check to see who's really doing what they said they're going to do, right? And then our company is so amazing in that, we inspect how we support these organizations. And if you've ever heard our president say it, he'll say, we're not in the check writing business. We actually want to, and not only give out the money for the grants, but we also want to volunteer with that organization. We want to provide our expertise. And so we do a lot to come alongside the organizations that we support and then help. So I get to see firsthand, for example, Sierra Metro Detroit, Jobs for Progress. They're an organization that we support with grant funding. Not only do we get to support them with grant funding, we will go and volunteer with their organization. We teach financial education, even workshops in terms of resume, or even dressing for success. So whatever it is, we try to be supportive. When it comes to basic needs, you'll see that, we support Focus Hope, for example. Focus Hope is an amazing organization. We partner with them to provide interns. We call them our student leaders, or even better, our weapons of mass construction. And so every year we pick 5 students locally from the Metro Detroit area, and we pay them for an 8-week internship, and we pay them to work at Focus Hope. And we also send them to DC for an all expenses paid trip. And what I love about that, right, is that this internship that we select, many of them, when you look at them, they're about your GPA and job experience. But our internship is about the work that you want to do in the world. How do you want to see change, and where are you volunteering? So it's for juniors and high school students, and juniors and senior high school students. And so the ability for them to just talk about what they're passionate about and demonstrate where they volunteered, that's what we decide, right? That's what we base it on, not what school you went to, not what your GPA is, because that's not always what makes the best person, if you would. It's a great thing, but that's not what we base it on. And so when I get to be around something like that, that's so different, that's so unique, that's not the norm. And I feel like at the core of what we get to do, like, I feel like we're really helping people. And then you get to go and you visit organizations like the Greening of Detroit. And I know I'm dropping so many nonprofits, but we have so many that we support. I get to go to their graduation and actually see the people who finished their cohorts that we've paid for, right? And so you see someone who didn't think that they could make it. Maybe they were a returning citizen and they didn't have a chance out there in the world. And so they join this nonprofit. They get an opportunity to build a life for themselves and their families, to help them not go back into the system. And so I get to go to sleep at night knowing that I had a hand in that. And that, I mean, I feel like I have the best job at the bank.
It definitely is very impactful. And I do believe that this work takes a village and a community, most definitely. So employment engagement and consultation services are very important in large or small corporate businesses. Can you ladies give me a quick summary of how that works?
Well, for me, I have over the years, I've developed a process, because for me, it's also about vetting the customer, the client, because if I'm going to be effective, I need to make sure that people can follow and their ideologies are in alignment with what I can offer. For example, long before COVID, my business went paperless and cloud-based. And so I have clients I've never even seen in person. And so for me, I have a checklist of things, and it's not what they must do. Sometimes if they are not technologically inclined, I ask if they're willing to learn, because I can teach. So for me, first, the process is we have a discovery call. And to be honest with you, I've been doing this now. In April, it'll be 19 years full time. I don't have a marketing budget, because it's all been word of mouth. And because when I started, I think I neglected to mention, when I started mentioning my master's degree, I did that because I did my business plan as my master's thesis. I'm still working that plan. And so I live what I teach in terms of strategy. And for me, it's about making sure that there's an alignment with the customer, the client, and what I do, not just to go, okay, they'll pay me, so let me just do what I need to do. You really have to make sure that you can be successful when you take on the engagement, and not just take it for the monetary. First of all, that's the objective, and with a level of integrity. But after you go through that discovery call, where they ask you questions, they vet you, and then you do the same, and you explain to them why it's important that we are a good fit, because I really want to be successful in the engagement. And then after that, I get the details. For example, if there's somebody that wants a very detailed business plan, I explain to them. And sometimes, and this is what consultants do, sometimes people come to you and they tell you what they want you to do. As a consultant, you don't listen to that. You figure out what the objective is, because then what they want may not be getting them to that objective. And so you make the decision as the consultant, and it's up to them to decide, no, you may want to do this instead if this is really your objective. So if they're saying I want a business plan, what I've begun to do is take people through a a 90-day business planning roadmap. So I'm not going to help you with a business plan that's just on the shelf after we're done and you're not even following it. So if we can go into small increments and just look at 90-day chunks, then we can start to put some things in place that you can do immediately after that 90-day process is over, and then we go to the next step. And so for me, it's about getting an agreement of what the scope of work is. After that, I give them a quote. In the past, I've been very generous in terms of offering fixed fees for clients. But I've sort of gotten away from that because unfortunately it's not a win-win because of the level of efficiency that I need to have in order to achieve the revenue goals I want. So I bill on an hourly basis with a cap. So they still have an understanding of what the budget is. If we're billing a certain amount of time, per month, then you at least know that if I get to the point where that is going to be beyond what we've agreed on, then we need to talk about how we need to make some adjustments. So it's still a win-win, but it's not as if I'm ending up making minimum wage because I'm just getting work at a fixed fee. So this is what I mean by making sure that we're constantly in communication and understanding what the objectives are and focusing on the objectives with always a win-win in mind. And so for me, after that, they get a very detailed quote with the scope of services that we've agreed on so that we have our targets of objectives and we know what success looks like from the beginning. And for me, that's very important because at the end of the day, I want to make sure that I'm meeting the needs and we're all on the same page as to what those needs are. So for me, it can be challenging because this is what I've learned at the corporate level. And I have to make sure that clients who are not necessarily engaged at that level understand that this is still the same process and it's to benefit them. And we're looking for long-term relationships. I can take you from a strategic planning process or that 90-day roadmap to then offering monthly services because I can put the performance targets in place to help you continue to measure your progress along the way. So it becomes a monthly service package after we get you set on your roadmap. So that's just an example, but that's always the objective, is to make sure we all know what we're doing as we work together, we being myself and the client, and we know what success looks like. Hope that makes sense.
No, of course. Thank you so much.
It does. And so what I'll say, Naomi, is that although Miss Angeline and I are in different industries per se, if I take bits and pieces of what she said, there's some commonalities there, right? So discovery, conversations, communication, and feedback. And most important, I would say, is that, when it comes to consulting, whether it's just kind of to discern what type of service really you're going to provide, really making sure that you meet the client, the employee, where they're at. I think that I do in terms of a lot of when we're discerning who we're going to fund or who we're even going to volunteer with, right? We've got, obviously I have a finite number of dollars to share, so we can't always fund everyone, but some of the things that we can do is provide our expertise. And so when I'm doing discussion calls about what type of financial education or what type of volunteer activity an organization is looking for, really, that discovery call is probably one of the most important calls. We need to understand what it is that you're looking for and make sure that we have what it is that you need, right? Because there's nothing worse than going to a meeting or a conference or a presentation that is about something that has nothing to do with the way you eat. You've literally wasted not only your time and the presenter's time. So it's very important to be very clear as to what the need is and make sure that you're honest about what you can provide. Quite frankly, I'm a bank, so I can give you financial education. If you ask me for education on how to do open heart surgery, I cannot. And I need to make sure that I'm clear on that, right? And so that I can direct you somewhere else that can provide you that expertise and that guidance. And so that discovery call is very important, but also, checking in. Right. So making sure along the way, right, that you have open communication, as Ms. Angeline said, and also really getting that feedback. So I think what's also important is after you deliver the service, follow up with the person and say, hey, what went well? What would you change? What would you stop, start, and continue? if you were to do this again? And so I think that that's very important. And so I say that piece in terms of when you're thinking with external clients, when you talk about employee engagement. So for us internally, every year we do a survey. And every year we ask our employees, like, what do you think? How are we doing? How are we measuring up to your expectations as a company? And then we build action plans around it. Now, granted, we can't change everything and you can't please everyone. But if the majority is saying something's wrong, then we need to pay attention and we need to figure out what we can do. Maybe it's an education, maybe something they think it's wrong, but we haven't done a good enough job at explaining what the process is. Or maybe something really is wrong and we need to hurry up and fix it. But what's important is that people are not going to be engaged unless you include them. Right. And so you need to ask and you need to make sure that you're responding. So there's one thing you ask, but if you don't respond, did they even hear you? And so that's one of the things that we try to make sure that we do at our company is really to ask the survey, respond, and throughout the year, it's not just a one-time thing, it's constant. It's like you asked, we listen. If I'm doing something, it's because you asked us for it, right? And so that's, I think, what's very important I would say, whether you're engaging with your clients or your employees, it's really making sure that you get a constant feedback loop so that it's not just a once in a blue moon exercise. You really should have that revolving door and they should always feel like they can come and talk to you, whether it's survey time or not, right? And that you're actually going to do something. So if you build that routine of you asked, I listened, I responded, then it builds a trust with them. And they know that they can come to you. And if something's not right, you'll either explain it, right? Or you'll fix it. And so I think that that's like super important.
I agree.
Thank you so much. So financial literacy is something I feel that should have been taught in schools. Can you give us 4 pieces of advice catered to young adults?
In the area of financial literacy?
Yes.
Well, the first thing that I would say is, and I don't know if the advice is just a broad, for me, this is the very most important thing as someone who has an accounting degree. Based on my upbringing and based on my experience, I had a similar background to Ms. Starr in terms of the family dynamics, the dysfunction. Love my family, but it is what it is. And many of us in our community can relate to that. I can know what I know, but it's the mindset, it's the behavior to apply what you know consistently with discipline that's important. And so for me, the number one most important thing to teach when you're teaching financial literacy is to also talk about the mindset, meaning you can believe a certain thing. You don't just have to work with a small pie and then work whatever you learn. You need to believe that you can grow that pie. You need to believe that you're part of the economic system and not just a recipient of whatever that system is able to throw out from the 1%. And so for me, it's a mind shift. So we can teach the mechanics. And again, that gets back to the tactical versus strategic. We can teach here's the budget. If we do zero-based budget, every paycheck you get, every dollar needs to have a job. What does this dollar go to? What does this dollar go to? That's very effective planning. But if we have a mindset that we need to feed some emotional needs by spending money, then we're not going to follow that budget. And so we need to be able to address the person. And that's what really got me to understand as I'm working with particularly small business owners. They're very adept at what they do. I have an example of taking a young lady through a process where she wanted to start a little party planning service for little girls to have their nails done. Not parties, it was more spa-like where they have their nails done. And I crunched the numbers for her. She was literally in my office. I had the projector up and I told her, you cannot have a one-to-one service model where you have people working on each individual girl because your labor costs are going to be so high. So we have to look at where you may have one person working with a group of 5 girls to do their nails or whatnot. She was adamant. Even when I showed her she would be making, she would not have a profit. she still had the concept in her mind that this is what would be ideal. And so for me, it's about teaching and understanding that we have the passion, we know what we want to do, but we have to put that feasibility test to it. And so I don't know if I'm answering your question directly, but for me, it gets into elevating the conversation to more than just this is how you do it. It's this is why you do it, and this is going to be the impact of your doing it this way. I can't think of any other thing, but I absolutely agree with you that it should be taught. I mean, how to balance a checkbook, if nothing else. The fact that these days a debit card doesn't mean you have money. These are basics that, and I'm not being, I'm not disparaging anybody. It's inherent that we would believe certain things if we don't know any different. And so that at that level, at the school level, is where that can be taught. There are so many things I learned in school that I've never applied, but if I knew, basic finance, even as a business person and an accountant, I probably would have made less mistakes because it's not always what you know.
Right. No, I would agree. And so what I'll say, Naomi, is that I'm really thankful that the Governor Whitmer, signed into the bill, right, making financial education mandatory in the curriculums. And so you're right. A couple things that I would say in terms of advice: try not to stay illiterate. Find ways to get educated in ways that make sense to you. So we at the bank developed a curriculum called bettermoneyhabits.com. It's a website and it's self-serving, but we also have curriculum there where we go out and we teach financial literacy at various levels, whether it's high school, college, young adults, older adults who are saving for something bigger. We teach a variety of things: English, Spanish, you name it. I think what's important is that, when I teach it, when I'm out volunteering, I tell the kids, I'm like, you spend an hour on TikTok, you spend an hour on Instagram, take 15 minutes and read up on something that's going to help educate you. But one, don't stay illiterate, right? If you know it, then go out and research it like you research everything else. You're willing to research a car, your girlfriend on Bumble, or your boyfriend. You're researching, folks, right? Research something that's going to make a difference for you. I think also, to your point, Angeline, understanding the needs versus wants, right? We spend so much time and just, you spend a lot of money on things that are not necessarily critical to you living. And until you make that, what I like to call a spending plan, because with the word budget kind of makes people a little ill at ease, I just tell them it's a spending plan. Make a plan for your money. To your point, Angeline, every dollar needs to have a job. And so when you sit down and you ask yourself, like, how much money do you really get and where are you actually spending it? And the other piece I tell people is that once you make your plan, go back and see if you really did that, right? Let's really stay in that. And I give the example of, I love my husband, but my husband will say, this is how much I spend at Sam's Club. And so what I'll naturally do is I'll pull up our bank statements and I'll say, well, this is what you really spend at. And it's a big difference than what he's thinking in his mind. And you gotta lead with facts. Right. I always say, in God we trust, everybody else show me the data. And so when you show yourself the data, I think it really helps people to understand, wow, I really spend that much on my hair, on my nails. Right. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. Make a plan for it. Save for it. Because here's the thing, I understand the concept of you only live once, and you're right. And if you deprive yourself on so many different things, then what kind of life are you living? But you have to really have an understanding of what is it that you need to live, what is it that you want, and then make a plan to get there, right? And so those are the things I would say is doing your research, making sure that you understand your wants versus your needs, and that you have a plan for it. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength, in my opinion, that you're willing to talk to someone and say, hey, you know what? I have some questions about this. Can you help me figure this out? And find a trusted mentor or confidant, whether if it's your spouse or your parent or your brother, sister, whomever, your teacher. But be willing to take the assistance where you're not familiar with the topic. And I think that that's important. I think a lot of times people are embarrassed about what they don't know. And it's time that we, and I know the whole key term is normalize this, normalize that. But yeah, normalize that you don't know something and be okay with asking for assistance from someone who is an expert like Angeline, right? Because they're there to support you and help you. And we literally want our people to grow and be successful.
Very true.
That was amazing.
Mm.
Thank you. Yeah, I needed that. Thank you for the financial literacy advice. I need that. I need to hear that and like understand that, especially like as a young adult. So this is our last question, but for small businesses and new startups, what are some vital steps to continue to thrive and survive when dealing with finance and marketing for startups and small businesses?
Do you want to go, Ms.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say do your research and know what resources are available to you. There are so many resources that are available, whether it's teaching people how to manage their budgets. So there are different organizations. Like I'll say a couple of them that we support, right? Detroit Economic Growth Corporation, or Detroit Means Business. It's an organization. TechTown has an amazing program, Retail Bootcamp. Research, because these organizations provide this training free, and they provide grants. And so there's so many, you don't have to struggle if you just do a little bit of research. And I make jokes, but if I tell people, how much time do you sit, pull up your phone, and how much time do you sit scrolling on nonsense, when you can spend a little bit of time, 15-20 minutes, you will find a grant, you will find a program that's for free, and that will truly help your business. They teach accounting, social media, like so many things to really get somebody going. And so that's one of the things I would say is do your research, find out what resources are out there. Don't spend your money when you can get other money for free, because there are organizations out there that are really putting forth the effort to make sure that you can get the things that you need so that you can be successful in your dreams. The other thing I would say is be realistic, right? Make sure you're ready to start a business. Make sure that you've done your homework. And I find that, unfortunately, someone may have a dream, but they don't really know how to do customer service, right? And so you've never worked anywhere, but you're like, I'm not going to work for anybody. I'm going to start my own business because nobody's going to be my boss, but you don't even know how to treat customers. Sometimes it's okay. It's not taboo to get a job someplace and learn how a business functions, right? So that way, when you go to do your business, then you know what to do and what not to do. So, be open-minded to learning, right? And then make sure that you're realistic of what you can do and what you can't do. And it's okay if you have to get a job someplace else while you're saving up money to open up this business. It's going to happen, but you have to be willing to maybe take a step back so that you could jump forward. Angeline, I'll turn it over to you because I know you're the expert.
Well, I agree with everything you said, and what comes to mind in terms of the most valuable advice I can give a startup organization or for-profit. I sort of call them all, they're all businesses, but sometimes I need to make the distinction, is that people and money, when it's time to start solving problems, it's not just okay to just put any person in a position. If you feel like there's some gaps that you need to fill, if I can convey nothing else, your decision making has to be strategic. A warm body sitting somewhere does not solve the problem if they're not capable of doing what it is that needs to be done. Money will not solve the problem if you're not prepared to manage the money effectively and do what needs to be done with it. And I see that so often, particularly in the nonprofit arena. And I understand why, because the mentality is we need help. And so any volunteer will do. If we need somebody to keep the books, we can have the parents do it if it's a student organization. That might be a good idea conceptually, but what I would always respond with is you just need one volunteer that knows how to do volunteer management. Then you have somebody that you can take as a volunteer and use that to leverage the labor that you need and find the right volunteer for the right positions. And so it's not good enough just to throw a person or money at a situation. You have to think more strategically about what you're trying to do and how to do it most effectively to reach that objective. And that gets into planning, and that gets, and some people don't like that because they're so excited about their passion and let's just do it. But, you have to rein that in and say, this is my long-term passion. I want to be good at it. This is not just an experiment. So let me just take the baby steps and do what it is I need to do. And as Ms. Starr said, the resources are out there. Find the resources. And if you're working with somebody, there are other consultants, but my goal is to work with people, and I say at the ground level because I'm corporately trained, but my passion is to take that knowledge, and I'm not just working with the large corporations. I don't have a lot of overhead, so the cost is not going to be competitive or commensurate with a larger firm. It doesn't need to be. I can work with the smaller organizations or entrepreneurs or the business owners, but you need to be able to also, as she said, find help, find people who can guide you, put that roadmap in place for you and help you. I like to teach them to fish, if you will. I'm not just saying do this. Let's think it through and let's understand, excuse me, why this is important and where it's going to get you, and then also put the key performance indicators in place. So after you've done it, let's look at how effective it was. Put yourself on a process of continuous improvement. Let's do it. Let's plan it. Let's do it. Let's assess it, and let's fix it, and let's keep going. And so it's a continuous process, and it can be put in place. And sometimes it takes work at the beginning, but once you get that in place and you understand that mindset, then every decision that you make, you're going to put through that filter. That would be my advice for startups.
Wow, that was amazing from both of you guys. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This was such an informational and wise episode, and I am so grateful to have you guys on.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. And let me just say, I'm so impressed. I just love the way that you put this together. I'm excited to see that you're yes, girl, take it. I'm excited to see that you're interested in accounting. I don't know if you know, but I reached out to you at one point when you had put something out saying you were looking to do something.
Oh.
So we'll talk, but
yes, of course.
I just really like your attitude, your passion for what you do, and I think you're going to do very well. And I appreciate the invitation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That means a lot.
Absolutely. And just to, add on to that, I really appreciated your perseverance. You were diligent and you didn't give up, and your follow through and follow up was fantastic. So thank you for keeping everything organized and in line and making it easy for us. This was very fun and easy. So I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for letting me interview you guys and be in your space. It means a lot.
You're very welcome.
That is the end of this episode, and that's a wrap, everyone. Have a good day and be safe.
You too. Thank you. Bye, Star. Bye, guys. Bye.